The numbers don't lie. In this video, I'm going to go over the Madison, Wisconsin real estate market numbers for July 2025. Be sure to stick around to the end because if you've been interested in moving to Monona or selling your home in Monona, I have a couple of interesting numbers that I would like to share with you. But for now, let's dive into July 2025's numbers, shall we? I want to preface this by saying that when I say Madison and the surrounding areas, what I'm really talking about would be other towns close by, or cities as they're called. So Fitchburg, Middleton, Monona, and then Madison itself. Let's break down the top 5 numbers that you need to know if you're interested in what's going on in the Madison area. The first is, how many sales were there in July of 2025? And that number is 226. The second is, how many new listings were added in July of 2025? 236 new listings. Of those new listings, there are 108 that are already in pending. So you can see that about half the homes that went on the market are already under contract. The average price in the Madison area is $566,000. Then we have the average days on market, which is 15. The average list to sale price ratio, again, how much above the list price did the home sell for? The average is 101% in July 2025. I think it's helpful to go back a year and look at the year over year data so that we know exactly what was happening in July of 2024. In July of 2024, we actually saw 10% more sales happen than we did in 2025. So we saw about 255 sales happen. Now, here's what's interesting. The price did not go up at all. The average price in 2024 in July was $566,000. The average days on market was actually just a little bit lower at 13. So you can see days on market starting to tick up a little bit, average price staying exactly the same. There were more home sales in July of 2024, but interesting to note, the list to sale price ratio, so how much again it sold above the list price, 102%. What's also important to remember is that even though the average price for the Madison area is $566,000, if we look at specific neighborhoods throughout the Madison area, whether it be West Side or East Side, those numbers are going to vary greatly. So if you're looking at Tacoma or Shorewood or Westmoreland, Dungeon Monroe, Vilas, all of those numbers are going to be quite a bit higher than the average price in the Madison area. In fact, they're going to be anywhere between, say, $300,000 to $500,000 above that average price. So then you're looking at anywhere between $800,000 to $900,000 average price in those West Side neighborhoods. Same thing is happening over on the East Side. So if you look at places like Maple Bluff, Marquette, Atwood, now those are going to be just slightly less than what you see on the West Side. But just know that if you're looking in specific neighborhoods, maybe you're relocating to the Madison area and you don't know much about these neighborhoods, we have so many videos on this channel to help you figure out where those neighborhoods are. But the one thing for people who actually live in the Madison area to note is that some neighborhoods are going to be much lower. So you could go over to Old Brick or Lake Edge or possibly even Eakin Park, and then you'll find a lower average than that 566. But just know that it does vary greatly by neighborhood. So let's talk about interest rates. Kind of a touchy subject, I think, but I think it's really important to talk about it. When we are looking at interest rates almost on a daily basis, what we noticed in July is that the 10-year Treasury yield didn't do much. The Feds didn't drop rates, and so interest rates really stayed anywhere between 6.6 to 7%, just depending upon when it was during the month, but they stayed pretty solid above that 6.5%. And I think what's going on here is that the psychology of people who are looking to buy, for some reason, 6% hits them like a brick, and they say, oh gosh, if things are at 6%, now maybe I can afford the house that I've been looking for, or maybe now it's time to sell my current home because I've really needed to move and it doesn't seem so bad at 6% as it does at 7%. So what we're looking at would be inflation. We're looking at jobs reports. We're looking at the 10-year Treasury yield, and we're looking at what the Feds do. And I think that once that 10-year Treasury yield starts to slip down, those rates will start to come down. So possibly August, September, be on the lookout because that's when rates could fall. not fall to 5.5% or 5%, maybe fall to 6 to 6.25%. I really don't know. I don't have that crystal ball, but I do know that I watch these like a hawk every single day so that I can keep my buyers informed about what's going on with their purchasing power. And for sellers, I like to let them know that we could see more and more buyers come into the buying pool if those interest rates do start to slip. So watch all of these economic factors, and that will give you your answer when it comes to where the interest rates are. All right, as part of the market update, I also like to give you what's trending. So what happened in the month of July with our buyers and sellers? I have my own personal accounts, and then I also get to hear so many other accounts from other agents, not only at Lauer Realty Group, but also just around the city. And what I think has been really interesting in the month of July is that buyers have more to choose from. If you look back to 2021, 2022, it was kind of like this, go see one home, make a decision in 15 to 20 minutes, and then that would be your home. Whereas now, what I'm seeing with my buyers is I'm taking people out, and we're able to look at anywhere between 4 to 7 places. One note on that. If you are looking to buy a home, what I would recommend is that you only look at 4 in a day. Because if you start to look at more than 4, then everything kind of jumbles together, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, which house was that again? I can't remember if that was the one that had this or that. So sticking to 4 homes is okay, unless you only have one day in the Madison area, or unless you are just so busy with your work schedule or you're pressed in time, then really it's a matter of looking at 4 homes a day. However, the buyer does have more options at this point because homes are starting to sit on the market a little bit longer, as we've seen in July. I just want to go over kind of the weekly inventory that we saw in the Madison area. And again, this would be Fitchburg, Monona, Middleton, Madison. And what we saw almost on a consistent basis, so every single week, about 225 to 235 active listings that were built prior to 2023. Each week, I was tracking how many homes were on the market for 30 or more days, and here's what I found. Every single week, that ticked up. So it started with 84, went up to 102, then up to 114, and then up to 116. You can see people were gone in July. People were enjoying their summer. Now, I think that we'll start to see homes go off market sooner than the, say, 30 days, 60 days as we go into August and September. But just know that that's a very different shift from what we've seen before, where we had average days on market and median days on market match at about 6. And now our average days on market is at 15. Our median days on market is still at 6. But it tells me that that time on market ticks up in the summer. And then probably in the fall, it will tick back down again a little bit. But to have only 240 some odd homes on the market in the Madison area, that just seems crazy. When we used to have anywhere between 600 to 700 in a normal pre-pandemic market, you can see our inventory is low. Supply is low. Demand is still fairly high. So don't get the wrong impression when I tell you that things are starting to slow down a little bit. Just know that it's seasonal. And we've always had a seasonal market in Madison, except for 2021, 2022, 2023. And that's because interest rates were low. Prices hadn't climbed as high as they are now. And so people were out to get that house. And finally, for buyers, what I see is that we are getting homes under contract for less than the list price. Not always. I would say 50% of my buyers in July, they were able to get the home for under the list price, and that ranged anywhere between, say, 3 to 7% below the list price. And then I had 1 or 2 buyers that actually ended up with accepted offers that were probably 3 to 5% above the list price. Again, it's all based on location. For example, one of the places that my buyers got was right on Lake Monona. There was competition on that because it was a beautiful space. It had a gorgeous view. And so, of course, people are going to want this. And that's why that was an offer that was in competition. Now, the others, no competition. In fact, I think 2 of the homes have been on the market for almost 60 days. And so that's where my buyers saw an opportunity. One of them has been looking for 4 years. And it just so happened that this one that came on the market was a perfect fit, and it had been on the market for quite some time, so they were able to get in for less than what the list price was. So you can see that we still have competition in the Madison area. When you look at that list to sale price ratio, don't think that you won't find opportunity, but also don't believe when you start hearing national headlines about there being more sellers than there are buyers. That's not happening in Madison. I think that we need to be prepared as agents to show you exactly what's happening in each and every neighborhood specifically, so that you get a better understanding of how long it's been on the market, what the list to sale price ratio is, all of those good things. All right, for all my Monona people, I promised you some kind of weird, funky numbers, and this is what happened in July of 2025. 15 total sales. Last July, we saw only 4 in Monona. Of those 15 sales, 7 actually sold for above list price, and they sold for 6% above that list price. However, we did see 2 or 3 that actually sold for anywhere between $60,000 to $100,000 below the original list price. So it tells you there's a lot of home sales going on, and if priced right, Monona is still a wonderful place to be, and people are still getting above list price. I hope you found these numbers as helpful as I do when it comes down to helping my clients. Whether they're looking to purchase or whether they're looking to sell, it's always great to have this information at your fingertips, because it allows you to better hone in on where the market's at. Now, obviously, first quarter, we start to see fewer homes hit the market, and so prices kind of go nuts. Second quarter, we start to see things calm down a little bit. And then by July, what we're seeing is that we're basing our pricing off of what's been selling in June, and that's going to be a little bit less than that first quarter. These numbers are also helpful because it gives you an idea of if you're looking, let's say, to relocate to the Madison area next year, or let's say you live in Madison and you're thinking about purchasing or selling in the upcoming months. What I'd like to do is give you the trends to show you exactly where I think things are going without having a crystal ball. So, I hope this information has been helpful, and as always, thank you for your time, and I'm glad you